If you're chasing data down instead of seeing it in one place, you need the Intuit ERP. Intuit Enterprise Suite. All your data in one place with built-in AI for real-time insights. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, March 18, and this is the Brussels Playbook Podcast. The vibe in Brussels today is conciliatory and resigned, as the EU begrudgingly offers Viktor Orbán an off-ramp ahead of a crunch EU leaders summit tomorrow. Also on the pod, Brussels takes a stab at fixing its startup problem and tests a more flexible EU in the process. And there's an exhibition in the European Parliament that tells the EU's history through the eyes of a notary.
Well, that sounds fascinating, Zoya.
You can't keep me away, Ian. I'm Zoya Sheftalovich, and with me today is senior EU politics editor Ian Wishart, who's back from the slopes.
Back from skiing, yeah, with a broken knee.
Broken? My God,
Not
you've
broken.
upgraded this injury as the days have worn on.
It's slightly hurting.
Oh, well.
I'm back in Brussels, full of energy and ready to go again after not listening to the news for a week.
Well, I'm glad you're hosting an EU politics show.
Yeah, you have to do all the talking today for a change.
Well, it's going to be very difficult for me. Let's get to it. Lead story today, Ian, it's tied directly to that summit that's happening tomorrow. The EU has made a bit of a move to try to get Viktor Orbán back on board with a big loan that's going to keep Ukraine alive through the year.
Yeah, and this is something really that's been keeping us busy ever since October, hasn't it? Because it was at the October European Council where leaders initially thought they were going to get a deal to fund Ukraine using frozen Russian assets.
Yes, and then Belgium came along and said absolutely not.
Leaders thought they would get over Belgium's concerns by December, the December European Council, but alas,
other countries joined Belgium, so the EU got even further away from getting the Russian assets to Ukraine, and unfortunately had to settle for Plan B, which was this 90 billion euro loan.
So the EU thought they'd got a deal. Well, in fact, they had got a deal in December, but then things fell apart again because Viktor Orbán put a spoke in the wheel, was it last month? He then tied this to this oil pipeline running through Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right. It's the Druzhba pipeline, which is Russian for friendship. It runs through Ukraine, carrying Russian oil to Hungary and Slovakia. And that pipeline was hit by Russian drones back in January, and the pipeline has been offline ever since. Viktor Orbán, who's got an election campaign that he's fighting next month.
And he's quite a long way behind in the polls, isn't he? Nine points, is it?
9 points behind in the polls. Viktor Orbán is using this pipeline and this spat over Russian oil to essentially bash his opponent, Peter Magyar, the leader of the Teaser party. And he's claiming that Ukraine is slow-walking repairs to the pipeline and refusing to fix it, basically to help his opponents in this election campaign.
And therefore said he would go back on his word and not let this EU loan to Ukraine go through.
That's right, and it is really unheard of. I cannot stress to you the extent to which this has not happened before, where an EU leader has agreed to something at a European Council summit and then walked back on that promise subsequently. So it's hugely controversial.
And Ukraine, amongst all this time, was saying, actually, there is no link between the pipeline and anything else, and actually we shouldn't have to fix this pipeline just to keep Hungary happy.
That's right, and the Ukrainian argument was, every time we try to fix this pipeline, the Russians attack it again. So we're wasting time, we're wasting energy, we're wasting people's lives by going out to try to fix it. The hint there was that it's the Russians effectively intentionally damaging that pipeline for political gain to support their man in Budapest, Viktor Orbán.
That he could use it as an excuse.
Exactly, and that is the claim and counterclaim. It's been a dirty election campaign in Hungary.
And obviously it puts Brussels in a really difficult position. But then fast forward to yesterday afternoon and we suddenly get a statement from the European Commission and the Council together, wasn't it?
That's right. The statement comes out saying that Ukraine has agreed to allow the EU to essentially send a mission to check out the pipeline, see what the damage is, and help fix it. And that is a huge move because Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, he has been saying this whole time that he does not want to fix this pipeline because effectively it's counterproductive for Ukraine. They spend money fixing a pipeline that then helps Russia continue fighting the war against Ukraine and running this full-scale invasion. So it was a huge kind of moment where Zelensky kind of had to admit defeat in a way because he had to admit that if he wants to get this money to Ukraine and it desperately needs it, he understands that he has to essentially allow this pipeline to be fixed. And, you know, the classic case is like what happened was for Zelensky, he had to eat a turd, so he's not limbling.
Yeah, that always throws me when you say things like that, Zoya. But what I really wanted to ask was everything sweetness and light now, is it? But 30 hours or so to go before the European Council begins?
And we don't quite know what's going to happen. I think people are reading the tea leaves. We've got some EU officials who are talking to us saying cautiously that they think this might be enough movement for something of a breakthrough. Although even the optimists are saying, look, it probably may not happen. Maybe. There might be a breakthrough, but it may not happen before the Hungarian election. So there's this key crunch summit tomorrow, but there's also another European Council summit next month, which is after the Hungarian.
And there's a hell of a lot on the agenda tomorrow.
There is a hell of a lot. And
so they might not even get round to substantial talks about this.
Oh, look, I think they almost certainly will get around
They'll have to, because this is the big thing. Even with an Iran crisis going on and, trying to get some agreement between the 27 of how they approach that.
Yeah, but I think two things can be true at the same time, as the EU is fond of telling us. This summit, it was meant to be about competitiveness, but basically it's been hijacked by this war in Iran, and now the topic of conversation is going to be energy prices and keeping them down. But this Ukraine stuff is going to be really a very key topic of discussion, because the EU desperately wants a breakthrough, particularly now that they have forced Zelensky to climb down and to accept this mission, and they need something. They need some sort of a win.
Okay, so how does this give Orbán an off-ramp, Zoya, and how did he react to this yesterday?
Well, basically, some EU officials who I've been speaking to over the past several months have made the point that they actually thought that Orbán had overstepped and felt that he had overstepped by going back on his word at the EU Council summit, and that he's been looking for an off-ramp and looking for an opening to climb back down again, because it is so unprecedented. No one's done it before, and really he has usually stuck to his word. So there is this kind of idea that maybe he's looking for an off-ramp, and maybe this might be just enough to get him to say, okay, well, I did make this commitment, and yes, I'll greenlight the loan, and maybe keeping the sanctions hostage as kind of a secondary thing that he does ahead of the election. And we maybe got a little hint of that yesterday. Orbán posted a video on social media and basically said his position hadn't changed, and that as long as the oil isn't flowing, there won't be any cash flowing to Kyiv. But we were hearing some slightly more conciliatory things from officials behind the scenes who are familiar with Budapest's thinking.
Good. Well, we mentioned then that this summit tomorrow was supposed to be about competitiveness. It looks like that's been overtaken by events, but the Commission is coming out with a proposal on one of the big issues on competitiveness today, this thing called the 28th regime. But actually, it's a bit more political than just competitiveness, isn't it?
Yeah, so the kind of proposal itself is pretty self-explanatory. It is about...
Not really, it's called the 28th regime.
But it's also called EU Inc. Ian.
Ah, right.
It's about creating essentially just an EU-wide framework for startups, because at the moment, if you start a company in one EU country and then you want to expand it to others, you've got to deal with 27 different labor regimes, 27 different tax rules. It takes forever to register in various places. There's all sorts of problems. And so what ends up happening is these really successful little startups that get going in various places in Europe, when they start getting a bit bigger, they end up moving to California because it's easier in Silicon Valley. And so the idea for the EU now is these companies need to be kept in Europe. And so there's a few things that they're proposing to change that'll make things easier for a company that wants to scale up here. You can register everything fully online quickly within like 24, 48 hours, pay no more than €100 for it, and scale up more easily.
And called 28th regime because you don't have to register in 27 different national regimes.
Exactly. And it's to stop this market fragmentation that Europe sees. We're meant to have a single market, but it isn't really a single market.
Yeah. So kind of fairly boring from a rules-based point of view, but actually quite interesting from a political point of view, because this is kind of the first test of this idea that was sort of mooted a couple of months ago, that actually if you don't want to join in some of these initiatives, then that's fine. We'll go ahead without you, according to von der Leyen.
Exactly. This was what Ursula von der Leyen said the EU was going to do at that Olden-Beeson summit earlier this year. She said the EU has to get moving. Things are being stuck in transit for too long. And this is the test case. So this is the first thing that she has proposed and said, we're going to make this proposal, and if there are some countries that don't want to get on board, because as usual, there are going to be countries that want to protect their various sacred cows.
National interest, yeah.
Sacred cow, national interest. And Ursula von der Leyen said, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to get on board, you don't have to. Maybe you'll join us later. Maybe you won't. It's a coalition of the willing situation.
Yeah, and it's happened before in big things like Schengen and the Euro and that kind of thing. But it's not really the way things were done in the past to these small projects, because the EU was all about one for all and all for one. And if not everybody agreed, then the whole thing didn't go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, if we look back to when Emmanuel Macron declared that we need to have a multi-speed Europe.
This is a good example of it,
This is exactly that. Emmanuel Macron ahead of his time. Maybe the French were right all along, Ian.
Well, the French would say they were.
They always do.
Okay, so we look forward to that proposal today, and then we see how that then will filter through to the council and to leader level eventually. Perhaps will get discussed at the summit tomorrow, but there'll be no decisions or anything. It's too soon.
No, it's too soon for that, but we'll see what happens. It's certainly going to be an interesting trial balloon. Ian, now for our last story. It's about a really cool exhibition that's opened in the European Parliament. It's presented by the Notaries of Europe, and it basically has various official documents from all around the EU about the most historic and important events.
I've been waiting weeks to talk about this, Zoya. Thankfully, the exhibition is finally open.
It is, and there are going to be some real doozies on display. Firstly, the US has the Declaration of Independence.
What have we got?
Spain's will of Queen Isabella the Catholic from 1504.
Not that.
It's such a page turner.
I've been wondering for ages where I could go to see that will.
No, guess who else's will you'll be able to see?
I don't know who.
Christopher Columbus's from 1498.
Nice.
Yeah, and Enzo Ferrari's.
The sports car man.
Yeah, that guy. He wrote a will.
I didn't know he was dead, actually.
Neither did I, but it's on display. It's also got the will of Chopin and Victor Hugo. But I'm really excited about seeing Chopin's will because my mum's a musician. She loves Chopin. He's her favourite composer.
Okay, so perhaps she can come to Brussels to see this European Parliament exhibition then.
I'll take her for a treat.
What do you know about the Notaries of Europe?
Very little.
They had their 30th anniversary 3 years ago. That's what I found out on their website.
And you're telling me we weren't invited?
We weren't invited 3 years ago. No.
Unbelievable.
Now the podcast is up and running. Perhaps we'll be a bit more prominent for these invitations.
I hope so, because I have it on good authority that no one throws a piss up and a knees up the way a notary does. So,
what good authority is that?
The notary who helped me get my mortgage. All right, folks, before we go, we have had so many messages, particularly with some fantastic idioms. They keep on coming. Ian, what louse has run over your liver?
I don't know what that means. What language is that?
It's German for if someone's grumpy or upset.
Ah.
Yeah, I could use that against you every day. We also had someone who tells us that there's a Polish idiom that you might promise pears on a willow tree, which means promising something that's impossible.
Oh, that's nice. I like that one.
Yeah, I'm going to use that too. But there's also been, this is quite something. We got a text message from someone who was responding to our call out from nightmare horror stories from their office buildings.
Is this after? Because this was the last one I did a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the water being off.
Yeah, but there have been developments.
Have there?
Yeah, but now we've got someone from DG Santee who's written in, not to be left behind by the DG Comp folks. They reckon their office is haunted. Yeah, because the lift, they keep getting trapped in an elevator and they've got no snacks and they're missing meetings.
I hope they're not haunted by the Queen Isabella the Catholic from 1504 in Spain.
Well, I think the thing you have to do when you're being haunted by someone is finish their unfinished business. So maybe the notary did a bad job and you need a new will. Who knows? Folks, great office horror stories have been coming in. Please send us more. Our WhatsApp number is in the show notes and we'll speak to you tomorrow.